Again to the Dick Pomerantz program. Ladies and gentlemen, I have two rather controversial guests in the studio, and we have some rather interesting guests on the phone. My suggestion is if you have any questions about air traffic control, the air traffic controllers, any comments to make about airline safety today, first of all, let me explain who my guests are. Tom Callipy, the president of the local PATCO union, Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization. Ben Coombs, former president of the same local. Mr. Gordon Robertson is in Ottawa. He's on the long-distance line. He's the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association. And Mr. John Gallipo, who is the president of the Aviation Safety Institute. The number is 646-8255. My suggestion is if you want to speak with any of these people, get in early. John and Gordon, are you both there?
John's here.
John, Gordon, are you there?
John is.
I got you, John.
That's Bill Robertson.
I'm sorry, Bill Robertson. Bill, you there?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Gentlemen, I'm just going to ask both of you to speak up, okay? Because we've got a lot of people on the phone and yourselves and my two people in the studio. John, if I can begin with you, with the Aviation Safety Institute. I understand, first of all, laying it out on the grounds here, you disagree with the strike. Am I correct or incorrect?
That is true.
Why do you disagree with the strike?
Well, I think it's obviously an action that is not proper, and I think that in retrospect, it was something that would not produce the results that the controllers needed in order to get across to the public the problems that they encounter.
Despite the fact that you're against the strike, is it safe to travel? Is it safe to fly?
I would have to say that it's less than safe. It's certainly less safe than it was 2 weeks ago. And there seems to be a considerable amount of evidence that we're receiving that suggests if something doesn't happen soon, there just will be something bad occurring.
Now, so that people understand the Aviation Safety Institute, where you're coming from, you are not part and parcel of the Air Traffic Controllers Organization?
We're not part and parcel of anyone.
So you're totally independent?
That's correct.
Bill Robertson, you're the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association. First of all, on a totally personal note, you are in an office or at home in Ottawa, the home of my former law school. So I feel very close to home right now.
Oh, very good.
Bill, two questions. I'm going to begin with the last one first, and that is, can you explain to the American public why it is, after having apparently been so effective as Canadian air controllers or air traffic controllers in really bringing to light the support that the American air traffic controllers desperately needed, why, in a sense, you seem to have given in and have essentially opened up the air routes to the United States and to Europe?
Well, first of all, it's not a question of giving in. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head when you say the point has been brought home to air travelers. As you'll recall, our association started reporting to the Federal Department of Transport in Canada last week incidents or in-flight incidents or near misses that the public would call that were occurring at the trans-border Canada-U.S. handoff points between Canadian and American control centers, and that were affecting flight safety in Canada. And the number of incidents continued to grow rapidly. And by the weekend, we had 41 in-flight incidents reported, some of a technical nature, which means that an aircraft didn't have to take evasive action, but that a potentially hazardous situation did exist. Others on the far end of the scale, being of a critical nature, requiring one or more aircraft to take evasive action to avoid collision. And we were reporting those to the Department of Transport here, and the FAA and the states, replying, they're fabrications, falsehoods, they don't exist, there is no problem. Our members working on this side of the border were, although not going to become one of the dead victims of an air crash, going to be one of the live victims. Because an air traffic controller working a sector who is involved in an accident is probably one of the most destroyed human beings that there can be. And so there was two concerns. One was for the welfare of the flying public. One was for the welfare of our members. And the number of these incidents and the rate at which they were occurring was putting such a strain and stress on our members. Our members finally said, we can't take it any longer. If it continues at this pace, there is going to be a crash on our side of the border, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen regardless of what they're doing in the United States.
What's happened since then to in a sense, precipitate your people going back to work on what appears to be on a full-time basis, at least pursuant to European-American flights?
All right. Well, in the last 48 hours, first of all, the government of Canada investigated the first 28 of the reported incidents that we gave to them. Of the 28, they confirmed that 26 had occurred. Of the 26, 16 of them, they unequivocally stated that there was an operating irregularity. The other 10, they only vary in degree from our estimation of the seriousness of the event. Now, over the time period, I'd say, of the last 48 hours, we had meetings with the Minister of Transport, met with the Minister of Transport for Canada until 2 o'clock this morning, at which time we signed an agreement which puts into effect in this country a very unusual operation, probably unheard of before. And that is because of our concerns over the transborder coordination errors and the possible impact on aviation safety in Canada, we now have in place in our 11 major control units that border the U.S. On-site investigators, and these investigating teams are comprised of one member from the association, who is an operational controller in that unit, and a member from Department of Transport Management. And they are there to witness firsthand and immediately anything that is happening, to document it, to investigate and find out what is wrong, and if serious enough, to take immediate corrective action. They are then forwarding their reports on to Ottawa here, where we have two senior people, one from Transport and one from KATCO, who will review those reports, recommend any additional action they think is necessary, and then the reports will be made public, and the Transport Canada spokesman and the association will be able to comment on them and verify for the public, without any doubt in their mind, exactly what is happening. Now, in that light, our members felt that, however reluctantly, we could reopen the transborder traffic, being always vigilant, of course, because the experience has shown that the controllers or the substitute personnel in the U.S., in our opinion, are not properly trained or qualified and are incompetent to do their duties.
With due respect, Bill, isn't that a contradiction? Because on the one hand, you don't believe that they're competent, but on the other hand, you're willing to allow flights to go from Canada to the United States?
Well, if a passenger wishes to buy a ticket and get on the airplane knowing everything that's going on, then I suppose that's the option they have.
Okay, give me two quick yeses or nos. As the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, had the same situation occurred here or there in Canada as has occurred here in the United States, would you as the president have ordered or asked your members to go out on strike?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Let us assume that instead of the situation vis-a-vis the air traffic controllers had been in Canada, instead of it being in the United States, it had happened to Canadian air traffic controllers.
Right.
Would you have encouraged your members to go out on strike?
If the situation that happened in the States had happened here?
Yes.
Which situation? You mean the negotiations?
The negotiations.
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because the two countries are so vastly different. And I really believe that I think the answer to that question would be biased by the Canadian ideology, and I think it wouldn't be meaningful.
John Gallipo with the Aviation Safety Institute, can you verify any or all of those 41 incidents that Bill Robertson has just referred to?
No, I cannot. I can say that we have heard of some of these, and we were told that by our sources that we would eventually receive that package of data. We have not. We are aware of many violations of the boundary in terms of coordination between the two countries and specifically the location of aircraft once they cross the boundary. For example, a flight from Minneapolis to Winnipeg. In one case, an aircraft was supposed to be, as I recall, at 6,000 feet, and he was still at 16,000 feet. That kind of problem was prevalent. And when Mr. Robertson said that, or what he described there as problems along the U.S.-Canadian border, just look at the borders between each of the centers in the United States. We have 20 centers. And it's our speculation right now, based upon data that we have, that that kind of thing was happening within our own country at the borders, and in some cases within sectors within one specific regional center. This morning, for example, within 2 minutes, there was a near miss and a system error between 3 airplanes. One airplane was going from Oxnard, California to Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles departure controllers put 2 airplanes right at this one guy, and in one case it was a near miss, in the other case it was a distance of about 1.5 miles.
Could you qualify or define a near miss?
We define a near miss as where the horizontal separation is less than 1 mile and the vertical separation is less than 500 feet, and where one or both of the pilots were surprised at the presence of the other.
John, if you would give me a quick yes or no to this response, to this question. In response, the Secretary of Transportation of the United States, the FAA, say, both of them say, the head of the FAA, they say that air traffic in the United States today is safe. Are they lying?
Yes.
I'm going to put both of you on hold. I have to break for the weather. When we come back, we'll talk to Tom Cullopy as well and Ben Coombs. And then, gentlemen, I'm going to go to the phones, and essentially anybody, any of the 4 of you can respond to the questions, okay?
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen, hold, bear with me. 646-8255. Let me repeat. Bill Robertson, the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association. John Gallipo, president of the Aviation Safety Institute. Tom Cullopy, the president, and Ben Coons, the former president of the local affiliate of PATCO. And on the long-distance phone from Ottawa, Mr. Bill Robertson, president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, and John Gallipo, president of the Aviation Safety Institute. Bill, if the international air traffic controllers in general make a decision, if they do en masse, to go out on strike or otherwise precipitate some type of protest, because of what's happening in the United States, would your Canadian air traffic controllers follow as well?
Well, that'll be the subject of discussions at the emergency meeting of the directors of the International Federation on the 22nd and 23rd of August in Amsterdam. The entire United States situation will be discussed, and whatever resolutions are adopted at that international convention will be brought back to our board of directors for their consideration, and I really couldn't tell you what our reaction might be.
If I was to be a betting man, and if the American air traffic controllers were betting people, should they bet on some type of organized protest internationally by their air traffic control brothers and sisters?
Well, I think the only thing I can say is that the full range of possibilities are being explored at the present time, and it remains to be seen what will come out of the conference.
A quick question here for the 2 gentlemen in the studio, a blunt question. Why is it that other labor unions and trade unions, and I don't go for rhetoric from Lane Kirkland is worth rhetoric from Lane Kirkland. Why haven't you had the kind of manifested support from other trade unions?
I'll answer it. Essentially, the reason we haven't had it is because we haven't asked for it until now. Ben and I are both just coming from meeting with labor councils in the Twin Cities area to ask for support, and they've expressed overwhelming support. And we anticipate that in the near future, as we can coordinate it, we will get the necessary support from other organized labor.
Are we only speaking here of verbal support, or will there be picket lines honored, or what?
Well, picket lines honored is a very difficult problem because of where we can picket and where we can't picket. We're asking for financial support and some help in picketing, as well as other actions that could include job actions on the parts of other unions. That remains to be coordinated.
If the pilots continue to fly and if the machinists or the mechanics continue to service the planes, your strike essentially will be, from a layman's point of view, it will look like a failure.
We look at our strike right now as being very, very effective. You have to understand that the airline industry only represents about 35% of normal air traffic in this country, even at its best. They're only running a percentage of normal airline traffic, and they're basically ignoring general aviation. We've been very effective from that standpoint. The ATA and the government have put up a very effective PR front, but in terms of the traffic that they're actually working, they're working a very limited percentage of what they would normally work, and we feel that we're being very effective, and that ultimately the cost of the industry will force resolution of the problem.
I might add to that, too, in the press conference of the member airlines yesterday in Washington, the conservative estimates of the dollar value was something around $30 million per day. That would equate to something approaching $11 billion for the year.
But deep down, both of you are disappointed, like most air traffic controllers, that there hasn't been this real sign or signal of great support except the telegrams and press releases put out by Liberty.
I would say we're not disappointed. We realize that this is early in the strike, as strikes go, and that as far as the protocol that's involved in approaching other unions and as far as their own regulation as to what they can give to us, most will wait a period of at least 2 weeks before they'll enter into or interfere with a labor dispute of another union.
Good evening, you're on KSTP.
Hi, I got a couple of questions for Mr. Colopy.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, how long did they sit at the bargaining table?
Well, our first proposal was laid on the table back in late January. Consisted of 99 articles. They talked about it through the period that our contract died. There were 37 meetings, the last of which took place, I believe, in May, at which time the agency said that they would deal on none of the 99 articles. We went on and had some talks with the administration. We dealt with congressional people, and ultimately, in mid-June, we came to the point where we felt that there was no resolution available through the normal collective bargaining process.
Second question, sir.
Okay, the package you first started out with, we'll just go with the main three, the money and your earlier retirement and your shorter work weeks. Is that the same package that you had at the end yet?
No, certainly it was reworked substantially during talks, although the basic package looked the same. What we submitted to the Congress changed substantially and was reissued, reducing the cost of the package to almost half of what the original was. So obviously we had moved somewhat. I think it is apparent that the prime issues here are the length of the work week and the retirement issue. We turned down a pay raise.
Sir, I'm going to put you on hold. We're doing a survey.
Okay.
Bill, as president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, could we compare and contrast your working conditions versus the Americans?
Sure.
What is the duration of your work week?
Operational air traffic controllers work 34 hours per week.
And how many hours do you guys work?
We work 40 plus. We get mandatory overtime when staffing dictates, and generally, well, last year they burned 600,000 hours of overtime nationwide.
Do you have mandatory overtime?
We have, yes, we do at the present time. We have a lot of overtime in our system. The question of mandatory in the same sense as in the United States, though, is it's not in place at this time.
What is the retirement, like after 20 years, 25 years, or what?
Our government just 6 weeks ago passed an early retirement bill for air traffic controllers, which recognizes two situations. First and most importantly is the situation of the air traffic controller who burns out or loses his license for medical reasons, and that provides that if he has a minimum of 10 years of operational service and is involuntarily required to leave controlling, then he can qualify for a pension of 2% a year for each year of service at the 10-year level, which is subject to penalties on a sliding scale between 10 and 20 years. And after 20 years of operational service, it's a straight 2% a year for each year of service, regardless of age. Then on the voluntary side, if a controller has achieved 25 years of operational service, that's actually controlling aircraft, and has reached age 50, he can qualify for a pension of 2% a year for each year of service with no penalties applied to him.
John Gallipo is president of the Aviation Safety Institute. Maybe you can be a little bit more objective than any of us concerned. You're familiar with the industry, but you owe no allegiance to anyone, from what I understand. The air traffic controllers say that their present working conditions are simply not acceptable. What is your response to that?
I have to accept the fact that their conditions are pretty tough, because for the past 8 years, and without bias, we have listened to and observed a wide variety of problems within the controller ranks. And the problems are not simply the man having to sit there in a stressed environment, but the fact that he has to work with equipment that is highly unpredictable in its performance, communications gear that could fail at practically any time with insufficient backup, and a management team that just seemed at that time, and it's carried through until the present time, that has no concept of what good management is.
However, you're not in favor of the strike.
No, I think that there had to be other ways in which this matter could reach some resolution. A strike in this situation is devastating. We see it as a clear-cut danger to the air travelers, based upon more than 175 incident reports that we've received since the first day of the strike, most of which, I'd say over 50%, are unverifiable at this time because we don't have enough concrete facts.
To the best of your knowledge, have we come reasonably close or extremely close or dangerously close to having either a collision or some form of accident which would involve the loss of hundreds of lives?
When a Western Airlines 727 passes a Navy A-7 fighter 200 yards off his wing at the same altitude, that's damn close.
Good evening, you're on KSTP.
Yes, one question I have for your guest, and I'd like to compare Canada with the United States. How does the pay of the air traffic controllers in the United States compared worldwide and with Canadian air traffic controllers?
Okay, the average income of an air traffic controller in the United States?
About $33,000.
Bill, Canadian air traffic controllers average?
It's about 27.
And internationally, are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. It's very difficult once you get outside of North America because of the different socio-economic structures. You get into some of the European countries, and they have some very unusual allowances, which are considered normal in Europe, but would be considered very unusual in this continent.
Sir, I'm going to put you on hold. We're doing a survey.
Sure.
646-8255. Good evening on KSTP.
Good evening. My question is for Mr. Gallipo. I would like him to comment as to the competence of an airline pilot to determine whether the air traffic system is safe or not.
John?
Well, there are many things that a pilot can do to assess what's going on out there in the real world. For example, the way clearances are given, the number of mistakes that occur during the process of handling an aircraft, the assuredness with which and decisiveness with which a controller acts in a situation are fairly interesting indicators of whether or not this guy or this person really understands what's going on and is able to deal with the problems. And I think, yes, not only airline pilots, but military and general aviation pilots are fairly good at assessing this situation.
If that is the case, and why aren't and if I'm to agree with you, John, that it's unsafe to fly, why do the pilots say it's safe to fly?
Candidly, I would say that many of them basically want to earn a living.
Sir, I appreciate the call. 646-8255. Good evening on KSTP.
Yes, Dick. I'm a first-time caller.
Thank you, ma'am.
You just touched on the point that I was going to bring up about the pilots. Are they reporting these incidents? If they're not, why aren't they? They're gambling with a lot of lives. Do they have a response to that? Are they reporting them?
Bill, in Canada, who is reporting the incidents, and who are they reporting them to?
The incidents in Canada are being reported by the air traffic controllers, and they're being reported to the Federal Department of Transport. And if I may, I'd just like to expand on John Gallipolt's previous answer.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one reason why there possibly are not more reports from pilots, and that is because of the fact that in the modern air traffic control system, it is so compartmentalized and structured that aircraft operate in close proximity to each other in many occasions on different radio frequencies. So one aircraft is not aware of the other unless they happen to see them. And for this reason, a flight could conceivably go from one end of the United States to the other, or Canada, as the case may be involved in an incident or a near miss, and never be aware of it. This was a statement that was just made yesterday by the president of the Canadian Airline Pilots Association, that even he had to admit that he could be involved in an incident and not even know it.
John, who reports the incidents and to whom in the United States presently?
Well, since many of our sources within the air traffic control system have no longer the privileged information, we're receiving the majority of our reports from pilots, and we're even beginning to receive some from flight attendants. Today, for example, we received 12 comments from a variety of flight attendants who say that they are literally fearing for their lives out there in the system right now.
Appreciate the call, ma'am. I'm going to put you on hold. We're doing a survey.
Listen, I have one other question.
Okay.
Also, I understand that PATCO endorsed Reagan for president. If that's the case, did Reagan make any campaign promises to PATCO?
Good question. Ben?
In a presentation to our membership today, Congressman Jim Oberstar from the 8th District went over a series of, I guess would be termed campaign promises by the candidate Reagan during his campaign last year. And we have a letter from the then Governor Reagan to our organization admitting that our system had great problems and that he, as president, would help solve these problems. These are detailed in 2 different documents, and matter of fact, those documents are being held by some members of Congress. There will be an investigation to see if there weren't any campaign violations in the promises that were made to our organization.
Ma'am, I'm going to put you on hold. No, I can't do that because I've got too many people waiting, okay?
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to put you on hold. Don't hang up.
Okay.
John Gallipol with the Aviation Safety Institute. Let's see if we can pin down the safety standards presently or the degree of safety in the skies today. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1, it is terribly unsafe. It is dangerous to be on a plane. Or 10, it is absolutely safe, and I have absolutely no reservation or reticence or reluctance or reservation or fear of flying.
Well, if you could put the value on number 5, I could probably give you a better answer.
Okay, 5 is that I'm getting on the plane, and I'm a nervous flyer normally. But I'm pretty well ambivalent about flying.
Oh, I'd say it's about a 3.
About a 3?
Yes.
Good evening on KSTP.
Good evening, Dick, calling from North Dakota.
Thank you, sir.
2 questions, please. Number 1, do the controllers in any way interplay or participate in the scheduling of aircraft, in other words, loading? And number 2, why did not PATCO go through a redress through the courts rather than taking that calculated risk and striking?
Ben?
First of all, answering the first question, we have nothing to do whatsoever with the loading or anything to do with the actual carriers and how they're structured and where they fly from or to. We simply handle the in-flight separation of the aircraft and on the ground for that matter. As far as why we haven't gone through the courts, essentially we have. One, we've gone through a legislative process by introducing legislation that would give us the relief that we're asking for. And the avenue that we have in the federal sector goes through the Federal Relations Authority, and we have filed against the employer unfair labor practices and not dealing with us in good faith. And that in effect, is the courts that we have gone to.
Okay, sir.
One other thing, Dick.
Yes?
Back to question number 1 and your answer number 1. It's hard to believe that since you do not participate in scheduling, structuring, and volume flights, that it's hard to believe that there's at least no feedback or reflection back to FAA allowing the commercial airlines to load when in terms the technology will never catch up with the quantity of flight units.
Well, I think what you're saying, and what is one of the problems that we've seen within the FAA, is that they wear two hats. On one side, they are promoting aviation, and the other side are trying to regulate it, and never the twain shall meet. They can't do both, and this has created great problems within the system because they are trying to wear two hats.
Sir, I'm going to put you on hold. We're doing a survey, okay?
Okay.
Appreciate it. Gentlemen, John and Bill, please bear with me. I'm going to go for a quick break, and we'll be back very briefly.
Okay.
The president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, John Gallipo, president of the Aviation Safety Institute, Tom Callipy, president, and Ben Coons, former president of the local affiliate of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization. Three of the four gentlemen will be staying on until midnight. We will preempt the first hour of the Larry King Show. We will be on an extra hour of the Dick Pomerantz program tonight until midnight. Gentlemen, you still there?
Yep, still here.
Super. We'll go back to the phones. Good evening on KSTP.
Good evening, Dick.
Good evening.
First-time caller.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Gallipo, and that would be, who is he funded by?
John, who are you funded by?
I couldn't hear the question.
She wants to know who finances your organization.
Okay, we get all of our financial support through contributions from individuals, corporations, and foundations. And we do some consulting work, basically in accident investigations.
Do you have any link, any liaison, any financial connection in any way, shape, or form whatsoever with the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization?
Neither them or any other union or the government.
Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, it does, and I have a quick one also for the gentleman from Canada.
Yes.
And that would be, does he have, or does the Canadian government have a activities in chemical dependency for their controllers?
Bill, do you have any type of program or counseling specifically in the area of chemical dependency, alcoholism, and the like?
We have a system that was started in this country about 2 years ago now of peer support for controllers with any kind of problem, be it marital, financial, addiction of any kind. And in order to spot people early in the system, give them assistance and rehabilitate them, and hopefully return them to duties. And it's so far been a very successful program that we're very proud of.
Could you be specific? What do you mean by peer support?
That means that the air traffic controllers, and my answer may get a little long, but I think it has to be explained this way. Air traffic controllers have been recognized in various psychological studies, both in Canada and the U.S., as being a very peer-dependent group. They seem to be only able to relate to other air traffic controllers in terms of the pressures of their occupation, in terms of their professional excellence and competence, and in general with their social attitudes. The result is that other people really cannot approach them or discuss the problems that they have. And it's been found that the best way, if you can do it, is to have a fellow controller approach the person and attempt to get them to sit down and talk and hopefully submit for evaluation and identification of what exactly their problem is. In the peer support network, we do not make any judgment of what the fellow's problem is, but simply try and have an honest talk and see if he will go along and get the help that's required, get the evaluation and get the help. And it works totally confidentially. We fund the peer support program. It's supported by our government in that they give the necessary time off duty for the support workers to contact people that need assistance. And it operates otherwise confidentially. We never know who's been contacted. The government likewise does not accept that when the person applies for the necessary leave to take rehabilitation, it's approved and his job is assured, provided he goes and takes the rehabilitation and returns to duty rehabilitated. Very positive program. We're very proud of it.
Do you have any type of programs similar to that?
Oh, we certainly don't. As a matter of fact, the absence of a program has caused us to seek restraining orders against the FAA flight surgeons on occasions, and we have had.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. I was president of our local when we went into federal court and obtained a temporary restraining order against the local physicians for pulling the medical certificate of our employees that were involved in chemical dependency.
Ma'am, I'm going to put you on hold. We're doing a survey.
Thank you.
Thank you. 646-8255. Bill, the American air traffic controllers say that 89% of their controllers never make it to retirement. Do you have any statistics on Canadian data to that effect?
Our statistics are almost identical to that figure. It's in the 87 to 89% bracket as well.
Good evening on KSTP.
Yeah, Dick. Earlier, you had asked the president of the Canadian controllers if in the same position that they would have taken the same action as the American controllers, and his response was that their Canadian ideology was such that they wouldn't take an action like that. I'd like him to expand on that. What is the Canadian ideology that would have prevented that?
Bill?
Well, first of all, I think the degree of unionization of this country and the collective bargaining rights that are enjoyed by people. The second, and I don't wish to be offensive by this or tread on any toes, but to date our experience has been that there may be disruptions such as the one that you're going through right now in the United States, but that always means that there's a deeper underlying problem which can't be solved with force or intimidation or whatever. It doesn't really solve the problem. It may provide a cosmetic cure, but it doesn't solve it. And there's been a greater cooperative attitude to trying to work things out. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but one of the indicators, I think, is what has happened in the States. There's been a very high level of frustration. My understanding, the situation that's led up to this strike really doesn't go back just overnight, but more like 10 years since American controllers began to lobby through whatever avenues open to them to improve their conditions. And this is the final straw.
Could I ask
we've, if I may just finish, we have had the full collective bargaining rights since 1967. Prior to that time, we did not have collective bargaining rights, but rather were subjected to government handouts. And I can tell you that prior to getting collective bargaining rights, and although it had nothing to do with achieving collective bargaining, there were threatened air traffic controller strikes in this country, but they never materialized because the issues were somehow resolved between the parties.
Second question?
Yes, you mentioned the cooperative attitude. Is that cooperative attitude both on the part of the controllers and the government? Because I perceive that the Canadian government's handling of the situation a little more understanding and not quite so reactionary.
Bill?
That's right. I would put it in that category. I don't think if a similar action had occurred in this country that we would have seen the extreme reaction that has been witnessed in the U.S. so far.
Sir, I got to let you go.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the call. Gentlemen, please bear with me. I got a break here for weather. John, would you agree that's the same case in the United States?
Oh, I think it's basically that, and we've gone through a very fascinating period of time called deregulation, and it's because of this tremendous growth in air traffic in the United States that the system is just absolutely saturated. It has been, and to deal simply with the problems of trying to keep airplanes separated and to try to minimize fuel consumption takes the devoted efforts of an awful lot of people. But when you throw in many other things like, as Mr. Robertson has just said, obsolete or Volkswagen components with Cadillac frames, we have essentially the same problem.
Sir, I'm going to put you on hold. We're doing a survey, 646-8255. Good evening on KSTP.
Yes, sir. I'm a first-time caller. I'm over at the headquarters in Farmington for PATCO.
Yes.
And I just need a quick question for John Gallipo. We need his phone number for the Aviation Safety Institute. We just had a Continental pilot called up, said he barely missed a couple B-52s the other day, and he wants to report it to somebody.
Okay, we have a toll-free number that can be used from any place outside of Ohio. It is 800-848-7386.
Okay, real fine. He said that he definitely had a less than 3-mile incident in an approach control airspace.
Well, sir, then you'll call the pilot and ask the pilot to call John, and then John can confirm it, okay?
Okay, sounds real good. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. 646-8255. Good evening on KSTP.
Yeah, Dick, I'm a first-time caller here.
Thank you.
I'd like to compliment you on your show, first of all, and happy to see you expanding in the morning.
Thank you.
First of all, I guess it's kind of a two-person question. Dealing with the working hours, I've been hearing a lot about 40-hour work week here in the States and tonight a 34-hour work week in Canada.
Right.
Of those hours worked, how many hours are actually spent in front of the screen?
Okay, Bill, in Canada, the 34 hours, how many of those hours are in front of a screen?
It varies on the unit involved, but anywhere from 6.5 out of 8 hours a day or a little more, up to 7 hours a day. Usually there's a half-hour lunch break and a 15-minute break in the morning and a 15-minute break in the afternoon.
How many hours do you guys spend in front of a screen?
It depends on the traffic load in the facility. If you're busy, you may spend the whole day there. You have a mandatory period for lunch that you're supposed to get. Generally speaking, if we're busy, controllers understand that their peers aren't getting breaks either, and so they don't take breaks themselves. If we're not busy, as many breaks as the situation allows, you have to understand that we take traffic on a first-come, first-served basis, and as much traffic as requests we handle. If the weather is instrument weather, then we get very busy, and we may not get breaks at all. If it's visual flight rules weather, we're not busy, we get a lot of breaks.
John Gallipo, since, again, you are, in a sense, the outsider with the four people among you, maybe you could explain this to me, because I can't figure it out. The American air traffic controllers want a shorter work week, and they say that they need a shorter work week because there's the high burnout rate. 89% of the employees never make it to retirement, etc. Now, we know now from what Bill said, the Canadians have a 34-hour work week, and they still have as high a burnout. If that's the case, then what the hell did the American workers want a shorter work week for? Because they're still going to have the same burnout rate.
Well, I haven't been too close to that problem, I'll have to admit, Dick, because I've been too busy with the safety issues. But I must bring to mind myself a report produced by Dr. Rose, and it's R-O-S-E, which was funded by the FAA for over $2 million.
John, I may have asked an unfair question because you got 20 seconds left. Go ahead.
He says the big problem, one of the biggest stress problems, is between the FAA management and PATCO. And the FAA has ignored his study, a 3-year study.
Sir, I appreciate the call. I'm going to put you on hold. John, you've got to fly tomorrow at 6?
Yeah, but I'll stay on.
Okay.
This is fascinating.
Okay, Bill, you can stay on too?
I can stay.
Super. We're going to have about a 6-minute break for the news, okay? So get yourselves a cup of coffee.
Okay, whatever.
I'll put you both on hold.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome again to the Dick Pomerantz program. For those who have just tuned in and you expect to hear the voice of Larry King, he will be with you at midnight tonight. An extended version of the Dick Pomerantz program in the studio. My guests are Tom Callipy, the president, and Ben Coons, the former president of the local affiliate, local chapter of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization. On the long-distance phone, Bill Robertson, who's in Ottawa, the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, and I believe in Columbus, Ohio. I think I'm right. I don't know. Whatever area code 614 is. John Gallipo, president of the Aviation Safety Institute. John?
Yep.
Just out of interest, where are you located physically?
At my home.
And in what city?
Worthington, Ohio.
Worthington. A suburb of what?
Columbus.
Oh, okay. I got it reasonably correct.
Good.
Good evening on KSTP.
Yes, Dick. I don't know who might wish to comment on this, but just a couple from me. I've heard that the airlines... Oh, I'm a first-time caller, incidentally.
Thank you.
I've heard that the airlines quite accept this as an opportunity to redo all schedules and perhaps some routes exempt from otherwise long-term negotiations, So it sounds that they might get something out of that. I have also heard, incidentally, that the FAA and airlines are preparing a new travel manual, as we understand them, in the industry for all lines to be out this fall, based on 75% of former service.
You want to comment?
I'll comment on that.
Tom.
I think what you're hearing is bravado, and the reason that I say that is they've already admitted to tremendous losses economically. They have a certain amount of debt that they have to service based on equipment purchases, and their fare structure and their route structure is set up in order to service that debt, in order to make the payments on their airplanes, make the payments on their computers. They're very expensive industries. When you make reductions in either the fare structure or in the load factors or in the number of routes that they can fly, you affect whether or not they can make payments on their debt. And I think that you'll see with the layoffs that are coming, with the plans to give stock to employees instead of pay, that what they're saying basically is a bargaining position rather than a position that they actually want to maintain for a year. I think the chairman of Braniff Airways said it best. He said basically that while these route structures may help some, generally speaking, this will be a curse for the airline industry, and it will help no one.
Bill, from the point of view of the Canadian airline industry...
Thank
You're welcome, sir. If from the point of view of the Canadian airline industry, if let's assume the American airlines do cut back to 75% of the heretofore normal schedule routing, what implication or effect would that have on Canadian routing?
I really don't think it would have too much effect on Canadian routings because their flights into Canada, the U.S. carriers, are of such a number and spread across the country that I don't think it would be a measurable difference.
John, do you want to make a comment on that?
I really don't. Yes, I think Bill's correct. I think people have to realize that a lot of U.S. traffic does, when it goes from U.S. airport to U.S. airport, goes through Canada.
Good evening on KSTP.
Hi, Dick.
Hi.
Super show. I have a question for Bill Robertson of the Canadian Air Controllers.
Yes.
I have two questions. The first question is, do the Canadian Air Controllers sign an oath of allegiance for the Canadian government not to strike against them?
Good question. Bill, do you sign an oath of some kind which says you cannot and will not strike?
No, as I said earlier, maybe the gentleman wasn't on the radio at the time.
No, I wasn't.
We have collective bargaining rights, which include the legal right to strike following conciliation.
Second question.
Okay. Now, if there's a mid-air collision in the United States, will the U.S. government be to blame, or the U.S. controllers, or will they share the blame equally?
I think the recriminations from a mid-air collision in the United States are going to be horrendous, and it's a price that I wish nobody would want to pay, but it appears that the United States at this time is going into a repeat of what happened in France in 1973. The French controllers were on strike at the time. The military was brought in to replace them. 10 days into the strike, DC-9 belonging to Iberia Airlines collided with another jet, and 68 people were killed. Prior to the mid-air collision, the air carriers, the pilots, other users of the airspace felt that there was no safety hazard. The day following the accident, nobody was using French airspace. It was all of a sudden unsafe. And I think the recriminations are going to fall very heavily on the Reagan administration if there's a mid-air collision. I think it's playing Russian roulette and with human lives.
Sir, I appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. John, as the president of the Aviation Safety Institute, the administration and the FAA say that the military air traffic controllers can make that transition fairly easily to commercial air traffic controllers. Yes or no?
No.
Can you explain?
Well, probably a large majority of the controllers who are now on the outside, and a good number of those who are currently working, were former military controllers. And you can't cast holy water over people and expect them to instantaneously perform at a level that is necessary in order to have optimum levels of safety. And it is just like taking a pilot who routinely flies a single-engine airplane and then putting him into a cockpit of a twin-engine jet and say, okay, I'm going to give you the book, and I'll give you 3 days of instruction. You can now, after you finish that, go out and haul people around, and we expect you'll do it very safely.
John, are you a pilot?
Yes, I am.
Are you a commercial pilot?
I'm not an airline pilot. I have a commercial certificate. I'm a certified flight instructor, and I hold a membership in the Society of Experimental Test Pilots.
Okay, let us assume for a minute that Messieurs Robertson, Colopy, and Coons were not here. It was you, me, and the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody called up and said, please fill in the blank at the end of the sentence. Knowing what you know as the president of the Aviation Safety Institute about air traffic control presently and the state of the art and the state of those people who are presently operating in lieu of or substituting for air traffic controllers, fill in the blank.
I hate multiple choice questions. I could write an essay on that, obviously. It is not a good situation, Dick. Plain and simple.
Ben?
Commenting on the military pilots, or controllers, that is, something has not come out in the press in relation to the air traffic control system as far as the centers, which Tom and I work at. Half of the controllers within the United States work in 20 of the air traffic control centers. We handle military traffic there. The controllers that have been brought in from the military so far are tower controllers that are used to handling the visual and the approach controls within anywhere from a 35 to 50-mile range inside of a control area. The people in the control centers, there isn't anything in the military to equate with what we do. We handle the military. We have in the past, and will continue to handle the military in the future. And the military, incidentally, flying has been curtailed. It's another thing that's not being put out, or not to any extent, that the military is being affected by this also. Tom?
One other comment on the military controllers in the system that we work in, the centers. They don't have any equipment that is even remotely similar to the types of equipment, the types of computers, and the types of displays that we work with. It requires training in those areas as well to avoid making a computer entry that would either cause the computer to fail or cause two aircraft to get too close together. And it would require extensive training.
The other example of this same problem, and I believe was mentioned on the earlier show that you had with Steve Clogg and Marty Connaughton, if you took a controller from Chicago O'Hare, journeyman controller, and brought him to Minneapolis International and said, start controlling traffic, it normally takes anywhere from 8 to 9 months just for that, and that's a journeyman controller.
Journeyman means a veteran.
A veteran, say maybe of 10, 15 years, to become acquainted and proficient enough to work the traffic in the local area.
Good evening on KSTP.
Yes, sir. This can be answered by anyone. I would like to know how many days have there been on strike altogether now in the United States?
How many, Tom?
Today was day 9.
All right, and how many incidents have there been?
You'll have to ask Mr. Gallipolt about that. We don't have access to that information. They don't allow us in the buildings.
John?
Well, we have 10 confirmed near-miss reports, 9 of which occurred from Monday through Friday. 8. Monday through Friday of last week. We have, I think, something like 26 system errors that are verified, and this is where separation got less than the legal limit.
All right.
And a large number of system deviations and pilot and controller errors.
Well, it sounds like about 3 a day for system errors and 1 a day for close calls. Is that right?
Well, no. Right now it looks like we were just kind of estimating what the activity is, and through last Friday we estimated that there was a system error, at least 1 every hour from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m.
But you don't have that confirmed yet.
Well, we have lots of unconfirmed system errors, but if they were confirmed, that's how many there would be.
Okay.
There could easily be more
Here's
than
the
that.
question now. How many do you normally have?
Good question.
We don't know how many there normally are, because...
You mean to say you've only been keeping track since the strike came on?
We've been keeping track for 8 years.
Well, then what's the normal rate?
We don't know what the normal rate is because not all errors are reported.
Oh, well, then all these numbers are kind of meaningless, aren't they?
No, they are not. They are a sample, and I made that very clear in the beginning, that this is data that we receive. Now, we receive an average of 325 near-miss reports every year. In 1975, the FAA administrator admitted on national television to us that, yes, there probably are about 3,000 near misses a year of all types for all kinds of aircraft.
Well, now that's about 10 a day, right?
Could very well be, yes.
Well, now what is the rate today?
Well, we don't know because all the near misses are not reported.
Sir,
some are not observed, and some are observed but not reported. And no one has the clear picture of what the total is.
Okay, caller, hold on a second, okay, because we have to add one more ingredient here. Bill, again, if you would repeat the Canadian acknowledged figures here.
The Canadian government acknowledges so far 26 transborder incidents in the first 6 days of the U.S. strike.
That's approximately 3 a day.
6 and 26 is more, 4 something, 4 point.
Well, you said it was 9, and there was 27.
No.
9 times 3 is 27.
Yeah, they've been on strike for 9 days, Bill.
No, but our incidents, sir, were reported for the first 6 days of the strike.
Ah, okay.
Oh, for the first 6.
Okay, and could you explain again, Bill, what is a transborder incident?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the ones we have knowledge of. That's where a flight was entering or leaving Canadian airspace, coming from U.S.-controlled airspace, and a potentially hazardous situation occurred.
Based on your data, could you make a comparative figure under normal circumstances when the American ATCs were not out on strike?
We would say that normally it would perhaps be 1 or 2 per week for a non-critical type of event, and 1 for every 3 or 4 months for a critical event.
How many critical events have there been in the first 6 days that you've been recording it?
Well, it's our count that there have been 9 critical events. The Department of Transport has yet to authenticate or report back, rather, on those, so I can't say, here's both sides of the story. We hope to have that kind of information now that these joint investigating teams are set up by early next week.
For the edification of this gentleman and the audience and myself, what does a Canadian air traffic controller and what does the Canadian government mean by a critical incident or a critical event?
Well, that's where 1 or more of the aircraft was required to take evasive action to avoid collision.
And they are required to take evasive action when they are how close to each other?
Well, that's a varying situation, but it could be any number of distances. I think the best measure is that evasive action is required if the situation is such that had they remained on their constant courses and altitudes, that a collision would have occurred imminently.
Sir, I appreciate the call. 646-8255. Good evening on KSTP.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a private pilot without an instrument rating, and I have absolutely no intentions of entering any terminal control area because I don't think it's safe until PATCO is back on the job again.
Right.
Okay. First question to you, Dick. Do you intend to repeat this program so that we can hear it?
You'd have to call management, sir. I'm the wrong person to ask it. If you're asking me whether I'd like to, yes.
Okay, I'll call management and ask them if they will.
Super.
Okay, also the next question is what can we do as pilots or as citizens that got a ride on the airlines do to help solve this problem? Who can we call and put some pressure on them?
I'll answer that question. The obvious problem is with the political system, and to get it moving, we're going to have to talk to the politicians. In the local area, most of the congressmen are home on break. Call or go personally to their offices and ask that they do whatever they can to bring the two parties back to the table. That is the only way it's going to get solved, is to bring the two parties face-to-face to bargain collectively. And beyond that, letters to President Reagan himself wouldn't hurt.
Of course, you got to send that to Rancho del Cielo near Santa Barbara, California.
I think if you send it to a Washington address, that he'll be made aware of what's going on.
Sir, if you do happen to call management, you ask for the program to be repeated, and if they say yes, make sure you ask for my residuals. Appreciate the call.
Ours too, Dick.
Yeah.
Hey, Dick.
Yes.
This is Gallipo.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment because it was pleasing to hear from a general aviation pilot. We have an exacerbating situation because of the need to limit the number of airplanes above 18,000 feet. See, that's the cutoff altitude. Only aircraft that weigh more than 12,500 pounds can hope to get up that high. And because the military has been asked not to do, most of its training at high altitudes, they have reverted to altitudes from 17,500 and below. As a consequence, because they have many low-altitude, high-speed routes all over the country, I mean, if you could see the map, it'd be like throwing a handful of spaghetti on a chart, and that's what it looks like. It's just all over the U.S. The fact that they have to do this training in the event of war, the fact that there's so many of them down here at high speeds, and the fact that many corporate aircraft are forced to stay below that 18,000 feet, we have a real compacting of lots of aircraft at lower altitudes. Well, general aviation is accustomed to that. They know that they have to see and be seen in order to survive, but it's getting pretty doggone tenuous down there. Now, add to that the fact that we're beginning to lose some of our navigation radios. No one's really talked about this. Every navigation radio in the U.S. has to be certified each year, and there's a 15-day grace period. If that navigation radio is not flight checked, in other words, an FAA airplane, literally flies through the patterns and certifies that radio aid is working, that radio aid has to be turned off. Only yesterday, the 2 instrument landing systems at Miami were able to be certified. If they had not been, they would have been off the air at midnight. Now, take that plus the closing of about 65 small airport towers, we have a real problem. And what makes it worse is that the airlines have to come down from 18,000 feet and land at airports, and they have to go back up. But people have to realize there's much more to aviation than just the airlines.
So what you're saying is that as the regular airlines are coming down from 18,000 feet, they may not know or be aware of all the little planes that are below 18,000 feet.
Hey, it was that way before the strike.
Yeah, it was that way before the strike.
You bet.
Sir, I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
With respect to that, Drew Lewis today in his news conference and talking about flight checking nav aids basically sidestepped the question. He said that the FAA Saberliners are flying around doing their normal chores of transporting officials around. What he ignored was the fact that they use those Saberliners. They have very sophisticated gear on them. They use them to do the flight checking, and they haven't been getting out to do the flight checking because of airspace restrictions and because of usage restrictions and that's due to the fact that there aren't enough controllers to handle those flights.
And the other thing that, along with that, in reference to equipment that is occurring in the centers where we're working with the computer systems, normally these systems are brought down for what they refer to as PM checks, where they go through routine maintenance, everyday preventive maintenance type chores. And to the best of our knowledge, we're having a little problem verifying all of this, but to the best of our knowledge, they're running the system 24 hours a day, and they have not brought it down to do their everyday maintenance. And for as long as Tom as I have been there, that was a daily chore that they would turn the computer off effectively, run through their maintenance checks, then bring it back up in the morning.
Bill Robertson, as president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, could you give the American audience some idea of some of the sort of the byplay, the verbal byplay that is going on between Canadian pilots and Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association about American airspace?
Well, there's a disagreement right now between the two organizations. The Canadian Airline Pilots Association feels that there is no problem in U.S. airspace, and they've been conducting operations in it. On the other hand, our members are the ones that have been in direct communication and coordination with the substitute personnel working the U.S. system. We see every system error, every deviation they make that affects our operation. And the airline pilot, as I said before, is not always in the best position to judge because he does not have the complete traffic picture. The only person that does is the air traffic controller on the ground.
What is presently the view or the opinion of the Canadian government, if any, about air traffic safety in the United States, or at least at the border?
Well, at the beginning of last week, the Canadian government said unequivocally it was safe, nothing was wrong, the substitute system was investigated by them, and in their opinion, all right to proceed. Later in the week, we began reporting the system deviations or errors or near misses that our members were experiencing as a result of the U.S. personnel actions. And we reported those to the Canadian government, and the answer was they're fabrications, exaggerations, and made-up stories. On yesterday, we received a message from the Canadian government after having reported to them 44 incidents. They reported on the first 28. Of the 28, they substantiated that in 26 cases, an incident did occur. In 16 of those, there's absolutely, I guess, no dispute between us on that. In 10 of them, it's a varying degree of, I suppose, severity. And those are all now being double-checked by the investigating teams, the KATCO and DOT investigating teams that were agreed to earlier this morning in a signed agreement between the Minister of Transport and myself. And when we have the report of those teams, they will become public in the next few days.
Dick?
Yes.
This is Gallipo again. I'm really intrigued with what Bill has been saying here about these teams going out to the facilities. No one in the United States has had that privilege except, I understand, the Airline Pilots Association and the Air Transport Association. And yet so many people in this country, so many interest groups, would benefit from knowledge about the true state of the system, that it would seem really appropriate to do the kind of thing that Bill and his people up in Canada haven't managed to put together. I think they're terribly enlightened up there, and I applaud them for that.
You wouldn't say that about their postal workers, though?
Well, I have no interest in that problem.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. Good evening on KSTP.
Yes, am I on?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I believe your program is grossly unfair tonight, bringing all people on of one accord, and further, they seem to have the well, it just seems like they just seem to all be against our country.
They're against our country?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second. First of all, Bill Robertson is the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association. John Gallipo. John, again, the lady would see your view as both political heresy and perhaps more pertinently in this case, you are prejudiced. You're on the side of the Air Traffic Controllers Organization. Your response?
Number one, I voted for Mr. Reagan, and I had to agree with the position he took in this particular case. And then, as Sheena might have missed at the beginning of the program, my disagreement with the action that PATCO has taken. I'm a loyal citizen of the United States, and I intend to remain that way.
And for the ladies' edification, we have contacted or attempted to contact representatives of the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, also airlines. We've had Western Airlines on the program previously, and unfortunately we have been unable to get a confirmation or an agreement by the FAA or a representative of the Secretary of Transportation to come on the program. Anybody from the FAA or the Secretary of the Transportation or one of his designees, if they want to come on the program, they are more than welcome. Good evening on KSTP.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for Tom Calpe, and I'm a first-time caller.
Thank you.
I would like to ask him what the effect is on general aviation, and I'd like him to explain what general aviation does for the American public, since the news media is concentrated mostly on the airlines.
Okay.
Well, general aviation comprises the bulk of the air traffic worked in this country. It includes business aviation, pleasure flying, and several other forms of flying that includes types of aircraft that range anywhere from single-engine, instrument-rated Cessnas to twin-engine bizjets, or quadruple-engine bizjets for that matter. The portion of general aviation that has been restricted to visual flight rules flying under these circumstances are those aircraft that weigh less than 12,500 pounds. They generally don't have the ability to get up to the higher altitudes. Many of them don't have oxygen capability. However, they are equipped to fly in instrument flight conditions, and they have utilized our system to a great extent in the past, and they are not being serviced at this point. As I said, they in the past have constituted the bulk of the traffic in this system, and they are not being serviced at all. However, they don't have an individual spokesperson to speak for them, and they don't have an ATA or some other body to speak for them, and so their interests are not represented.
Appreciate the call, sir. 646-8255. Good evening on KSTP.
Good evening, Dick.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll have to speak.
First-time caller.
Thank you. Please speak up.
Okay. And I'd like to direct my question to Tom on the contract that they signed. Why did PATCO have to sign this no strike clause or no strike agreement, whichever the case may be? And how long has the government been in control of the controllers?
Well, the government has been in control of the controllers since air traffic control's inception, well, at least modern air traffic control's inception, post-World War II era. The no strike clause is an oath that air traffic controllers and all government employees take when they hire on, and it thus becomes incorporated into each contract that any union signs with the federal government. If you'd like to discuss why we decided to break that oath, that's a very lengthy and complicated discussion.
I understand that, yeah.
Appreciate the call, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bill Robertson, as the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Organization, perhaps I'm going to put you in a strange catch-22. On the one hand, you support the strike, the American strike. You understand why they are on strike. But do you, either as the head of your union or as an individual, do you agree with the breaking of the specific oath that Tom and Ben and all the other air traffic controllers took?
Well, if I've got about a minute or so, I'd like to answer it, unless you've got another weather check.
No, go ahead.
First of all, that lady that just called in and expressed the fear the tone of the program was anti-American, I'd like to explain to her probably a little-known fact, and that's my father's an American. And my comments are not anti-American, anti-Canadian, or anti-anything like that. I've traveled fairly widely around the world and had a chance to see almost every system there is, and I think that the North American continent, we probably are the most fortunate people in the world to share the two countries that we do, which are free democracies and give us all the right to criticize. And my comments are that regardless of the right or the wrong of what happened with the PATCO members and the breaking of the oath, my concerns, and I think the concerns of a great many people, are centered into what we now see as the systematic or unsystematic, I don't care what you call it, destruction of probably one of your richest resources, and that's your air traffic control system. You have people, 13,000 people, a tremendous number, who, if the training costs are anything like they are here in Canada, have cost about $200,000 each to train, who have years of experience and a wealth of knowledge, and all of that is going to be destroyed because of perhaps indiscretion, because of perhaps justified action on the part of the individuals who felt frustrated or whatever. And my greatest concern is that over the question of whether the oath should have been broken or it shouldn't have, the path that appears to be being followed is a destruction of such a rich system that I don't think anybody fully appreciates the consequences. I think that some bad advice is being given somewhere along the way, and a policy has been chosen, which I would like to think will be reviewed and to try and get everybody back together and get the system going.
With due respect, Bill, would you agree, though, that the undertaking by the American air traffic controllers to break that oath from the point of view of most Americans, was a politically unpalatable step to take?
Well, I'm probably going to get myself in a lot of trouble. But aside from that, I think that sometimes we all have short memories on both sides of the border. And everybody commits an indiscretion. And I can recall that there have been some very prominent Americans that have committed indiscretions on oaths they've sworn to the American people. And they've been given full and complete and absolute pardons. And I think that the same degree of magnanimity might be shown to controllers as well.
Good evening on KSTP.
Question for the PATCO?
Yes.
Drew Lewis and the Reagan administration keep saying that the flying is entirely safe, and you gentlemen seem to have come up with very good evidence and all through the air that the flying is not safe. If that is the case, would PATCO consider charging Drew Lewis and the Reagan administration with cover-up joined in by a class action suit with citizens that would join in with PATCO? And before doing that, with the hope that you would be avoiding an accident also.
Tom?
You have to understand that Drew Lewis, besides having access to the facts, has access to an ability to conceal some facts. You also have to understand that right now we're about $600,000 in the hole on legal costs, and I'm sure by the time this thing is resolved, we're going to be a couple of $1 million in the hole on legal costs. But if you'd like to send a donation, bail us out of that hole, we'd be happy to pursue that.
Would PATCO consider joining citizens in a class action suit?
We have, in fact, notified all of the major networks, as well as 20 of the major papers, that we believe that they themselves are in jeopardy in carrying advertising that indicates that the system is in fact safe. And we have told the press that we cannot be a part of that we want to be fully absolved from that, and that we have stated unequivocally that the system is in fact unsafe and that you should not fly.
Sir, appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, one question that I have not asked and I haven't heard anybody address on television either. Could you tell us from your perspective as the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, what is the feeling of the Canadian people, the Canadian public, about our American air traffic controller strike?
Oddly enough, there's been very little public opinion sampling on that question. I know some of the comments that we've received from callers in the office has been along the lines of they took an oath and they broke it. But on the other hand, they've also said you cannot take 13,000 professionals out of the system and expect me, that is the caller, to believe that it's a safe system. And I think a lot of people are seeing through the veneer of the protestations of the administration that everything is normal. People can understand some simple mathematics. And when you take 13,000 people out and you put 2,500 unqualified people in, something is wrong.
Good evening on KSTP. Hello. Which line? Give me the finger. Okay. Good evening on KSTP.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. I have basically three short questions, and I'd like to address them possibly to Mr. Colby. First question is, what are Drew Lewis's and Lindhelm's qualifications in air traffic? What are the hours, his normal work week that he works, and the amount of traffic, also the amount of traffic that the U.S. works in comparison with other countries?
Sir, if it's all right with you, I'd like to take the question out of Tom's hands and give it to somebody who can be a little bit more objective. And I'm not saying that Tom's not being objective, but I would hope the president of the Aviation Safety Institute would tell us a little bit more about Drew Lewis.
Sure.
John?
I don't know Drew Lewis personally. I know Lynn Helms personally. Lynn Helms is a member of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots and former president of Piper Aircraft. He has never been a controller, to my knowledge. He has been briefed on air traffic control by his people. and that's, I would say, the limit of it. Mr. Lewis had connections in aviation in California, not California,
Was it Pennsylvania?
And I think that's the extent of it.
Appreciate the call, sir. Thank you. 646-8255. Good evening on KSTP. Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, I got two questions, or part of a statement. My background, I'm work for a major airline here in the Twin Cities in the Flight Operations Department. I've dealt, as a dispatcher, we've dealt with ATC for a long time and recognize their problems. And as far as stress on the job, as a dispatcher, we've experienced the same stress. But the questions, mainly to the Canadian representative and the local representative here for PATCO. Gander was shut down. They refused to handle aircraft and kind of safety items. Why they shut them down in the aircraft proceeding into Canada? And since the Gander control was not totally directly connected with the United States control outside of New York Oceanic on the extreme eastern end, how could they justify their actions?
Okay, hold on. Bill, do you want to justify your action, please?
I'd gladly discuss that, and the fact is that the Canadian government would not maintain partial service on the North Atlantic. Our controllers in Gander said they would clear traffic into and out of Canadian airspace, and the Canadian government said, no, we will not allow a discriminatory North Atlantic service, and they shut it completely. So if you want a fuller answer, sir, you'll have to go to the government.
Second question, sir.
Okay, just for Mr. Talapi. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but I'm interested in your present work schedule. Normally, if you were working, how many days a week? We have very similar working conditions. We work around the clock 7 days a week. Our office must be manned. And maybe we have a better union, but what we're facing by donating vacation days and work and shift overlaps, our work year will be eventually reduced to 219 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
Has your group ever thought of anything to that?
Tom?
We certainly have suggested that, and we're suggesting a reduced work week. Right now, we're working a 40-hour work week, 2,050 hours a year, roughly, is what that equates to. Our normal weekly schedule starts off with a 4 to 12 shift. The second day, we come in on a 2 to 10. Those are both evening shifts. The day after the 2 to 10, we work from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. The fourth day, we work from 6:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon, and then we come back in at 11:30 at night and work from 11:30 that day until 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. the next day.
Bill, do you have the same kind of rotating schedule?
Our shift cycles are either 5 days of work and 4 days of rest, and then 5 days of work and 3 days of rest, or in some cases just continuing 5 days of work and 4 days of rest. The shift cycle or the shift schedules within are usually 2 days and then 3 evenings, and then the next one 3 days and 2 evenings, with midnight shifts interspersed, depending on the size of the unit, anywhere from every 2 to 4 months.
Sir, I appreciate the call. Gentlemen, please bear with me. Back with the Dick Pomerantz program, an extended version. Another 7 minutes to go. My guest, Bill Robertson, the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association in Ottawa. John Gallipo, president of the Aviation Safety Institute in Worthington, Ohio. In the studio, Tom Callipy and Ben Coons with the local affiliate of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization. Gentlemen, we have about 6 minutes left. We'll take a couple more calls. Good evening on KSTP.
Dick?
Yes.
Dick, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm a long-time listener, but a first-time caller.
Thank you.
It's a fascinating show. I wish I had time to ask 100 questions, but I've got one comment and one question.
Okay.
First of all, my impression has been, I'm not only listening for the last hour, but my impression has been that since the strike began, the main concern has been the safety factor. However, my information through, obviously, the media and newspaper was that prior to the actual strike, the main concern has been dollars. That the PATCO wants $660 million, and the government offered $40 million. And really what it boiled down to is dollars and cents. And I have a tendency to probably go along with the majority of Americans that believe that really it is strictly money. And I'm not so sure the airways are going to be any safer raising up $660 million, especially when it's $660 million of my money.
Okay, your question then.
My question is, one of my questions anyway, and I'll just leave it at that, is what does PATCO think the ramifications will be if they went back to work and if they got more money, other government workers going out, postal strikers or postal workers?
It's a fair question. Tom?
In the first place, I think there's some confusion in the media, and as a result in the minds of the people who utilize the media and what we're seeking. We turned down a pay raise. The real issue is our survival in the workplace. The reason we turned down the money is because it would have forced us to work longer hours instead of shorter hours, when in fact we feel that to survive we're going to have to adjust the number of hours we work downward. As far as the ramifications for other government employees, I think that all employees in this country should have the right to bargain collectively for the issues that affect them the most. And the government should set up some form of meaningful collective bargaining, instead of being able to simply say to employee groups that want to bargain, this is the last offer, take it or leave it, and we know you can't strike, so therefore you're going to have to accept whatever we toss you.
Does that mean
That's known as collective begging.
You want the right to strike?
It doesn't have to be the right to strike. You could have the right to arbitration, conciliation, or several other forms of bargaining that would suitably solve the problem. I think Ben had a comment on that area.
Well, along that line, it particularly impacts us, is that in a government is the only employer of air traffic controllers. They have monopoly on the business. There isn't any other relief. Some of the other federal agencies are employing people that can be employed in the private sector. So they don't necessarily have the same problems that we have. But I'd like to reiterate Tom's statement that we wouldn't have gotten to this situation had there been some way to resolve it with a mandatory arbitration or the right to strike.
Sir, I appreciate the call. John, we've got about 3.5 minutes left. As the president of the Aviation Safety Institute, would you sort of leave us with where your head's at right now concerning where this country stands with its air traffic controllers?
With the air traffic controllers, we're building very, very slowly, and I think in a dangerous way, some new talent that is going to get their feet wet, and probably at the expense of some people's lives. If we don't have some sort of meaningful, sensible, rational solution to the problem that exists right now, I fear that we're going to face some very bad times ahead, because the loss of many people could just devastate so many great things we have going for this country. I was sitting here thinking what would be an appropriate thing, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn had quoted in one of his books a very old Russian proverb, and I probably don't have it exactly, but in effect it was this: until it happens to you, it will not be true. And I think the American public has got to realize that the same government that, and I love my government, I love my country, the same government that has been telling us that there are no problems in the system is the one that said there could never be a 3-mile island.
Okay, Bill Robertson, President of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, from your perspective, leave us with what's on your mind.
Well, I'm very concerned. I'm concerned with the impact on air travel in Canada and the effect on our controllers. And that, of course, is what precipitated the actions of the last couple of days and the special investigative bodies that are now underway. In a more global sense, I'm concerned in the long range, or immediately outside of Canada, for the safety of air travelers in the United States, just as a professional who has a genuine concern for air travel anywhere in the world where I know there are deficiencies or substandard conditions. And without doubt, in my opinion, and I've got 13 years experience in air traffic control, the United States system is substandard today. There is no professional in the world who could stand up with a straight face and say anything else. And as I said a few minutes ago, I just feel that the systematic destruction of that system, which is now in progress, because the rebuilding is going to take a lot longer than 21 months. That's dreaming in technicolor, as we say here. In the Canadian system, for every 2.74 trainees you hire, you graduate one qualified controller. And I don't think your statistics are very far from that for the United States training. It takes a long, long time to develop a mature system.
I've got to intervene here, Bill, and I want to thank both you and John, really, personally and professionally, for it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I gather, in both your cities, and I very much appreciate you taking the time out and coming on the program.
Thank you.
Take care.
Delighted to do it.
Pleasure. Take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye. Tom, Ben, 25 seconds left. If you want to say something in 20 seconds, go ahead.
I think what is probably the hardest thing for us about this whole encounter, other than the personal grief that it's put us through, is that we were probably going to be costing people their jobs that could have been averted had the administration dealt in good faith with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all four gentlemen on your behalf, and I will see everybody tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. On behalf of Bill, this is Dick wishing you good night, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9.